Hey, what's going on everyone? In this review, we'll be looking at the first kit in what I unofficially call the 2.0 era of Master Grades, the RX-178 Gundam Mk-II version 2.0. Alright, this review is going to cover both the AEUG and the Titans version of this mobile suit, since they're basically just the same kit. Of course, anytime a difference pops up, I'll be sure to point it out to you. Okay, we'll be reviewing these Master Grade Gundams in 4 categories: the build, appearance, articulation, and gimmicks. We'll be giving each a score from 1 to 5, so at the end we can tally it all up for an average score. Hopefully this review can help you decide if you should pick up these iconic Master Grades. Oh, and sorry about all the dust on these kits. I've had them for a really long time and they're beginning to show it. Now let's get right into this build. With this being the first true 2.0 kit, it came out way back in 2005. During the mid to late 2000s, Bandai was really on their A game, making kits with great inner frames, an anime accurate appearance, and tons of weapons. This Master Grade, while not as complex as the later 2.0 kits, still nails a lot of these elements. While the build isn't super complex from the waist up, the legs are just amazing. They have a little bit of everything going on here. Braided pipes on the back, silver pistons on the front, inner frame poking through on the sides, and of course tons of moving armor pieces. These may be one of my favorite leg builds of any Master Grade. But again, from the waist up it's pretty bland. I mean, the arms only have a single moving piece, and even then it's really basic. The head is also literally just 2 pieces snapped around a face section. Really, despite this being a 2.0 kit, I wouldn't want to display this inner frame on its own. Moving on to the armor, you'll notice the part separation here is really great. There are no needless seam lines and really no need for paint. The panel lines are also deep enough to hold their ink. You could build this guy out of the box and have a pretty solid Mk-II. However, there are still quite a few places I'd recommend detailing up. Nothing mandatory, just nice touch-ups. First up is this red section on the side skirt. This one is just to shoot for more anime accuracy. Just fill this gap with red paint, then lightly run some fine sandpaper over the top to get that really hard edge. Next are these green camera lenses on the chest. For some reason you don't get a sticker for them, however they're really easy to paint, so it isn't that big of a deal. You could also add this gray to the side of the ankle armor, just to spice it up. Lastly, you can fill in the bulk of these vents with black paint. These vents either have panel lines or inner frame poking through, but you know how much I care about anime accuracy, so I went with that solid black look instead. I tried painting the vents on the outside of the leg too, but it's a real hassle since this is just a single yellow piece with the fins built in. My hand is nowhere near steady enough to get paint between these yellow fins, so I kinda just gave up. So the build for this kit, it's pretty great, especially the leg build. However, the rest of it really isn't up to par with the 2.0 kits that followed. Still, this is a pretty big step up from earlier kits and a great way to kick off the 2.0 era. I'll give this build a solid 4 out of 5. I'd say beginners could build this kit pretty early on as long as they pay special attention while building the legs. Now let's take a look over this appearance. This Master Grade is exactly how I want my Mk-IIs to look. See, a Mk-II should be bulky and these 2.0s are just that. While they are a little bit slimmed up compared to their anime appearance, once you put them to an action pose, especially a hunched over one, his bulk really shines. These 2.0s also have just the right amount of panel lines. They've got all the tick marks they have in the anime and nothing more. Just perfect. The colors on both of these kits are great, by the way. The AEUG version is a nice gray, and the red, yellow, and black are all spot on. It's easy to fall into that trap of making lead Gundams white, but this guy does a good job of maintaining that anime accurate gray, but still looking like a hero suit. The Titans version is also a pretty solid dark blue. I will say this plastic is super glossy though. While it isn't a big deal on the gray of the AEUG version, this Titans version just blinds you with its glossiness. I'm sure some people are into that, but to me it just makes them look way too toyish. I think a nice top coat would really benefit this dark plastic. Maybe a matte finish to knock down some of that shine, or maybe just lean into that gloss finish and make it really sparkle. It's up to you. As far as decals go, it's the usual dry transfer model numbers and peel and stick caution signs. Of course you get a different set of model numbers for the 2 versions of this kit, one focusing on the AEUG and the other focusing on the Titans. The Titans version specifically comes with the model numbers for 3 separate units, just like in the anime. I went with Unit 3 of course, because that's the one Camille stole in the anime and ultimately became the unit used throughout Zeta Gundam. And that about does it for the appearance. Like pretty much every other 2.0 Master Grade, this kit just nails that anime accurate look. I'll give the appearance of these kits a perfect 5 out of 5. Just note that if you're getting the Titans version, you may want to consider a top coat. Okay, now let's see if his articulation can keep the high scores rolling. Starting with the feet, both the toes and heel can move up and down. Really solid stuff here. The ankle has a ball joint on the bottom and a hinge on the top, so you get all the mobility you need. This armor piece moves too, by the way, which is pretty cool. You get about a 135-degree bend from the knee. When you bend it, all of these armor pieces move with it. It's a thing of beauty. The hips use a modified ball and socket, which means it just has a polycap thrown in. It does its job, but over time the polycap tends to loosen up. If you get this guy up in the air, the legs will more than likely droop down over time. You can also move the hip joints forwards and backwards, but I really don't use this feature too much. I think it's for if you're trying to do a crouching pose. Moving on up, the waist sections move how you would expect. The back skirt is locked in place though. The chest can spin at the waist and move a little bit forwards and backwards. On a random side note here, the AEUG version came out a few months before the Titans version. This first pressing of the AEUG kits used a slightly different chest mechanism that actually couldn't spin at the waist. This was later fixed with the release of the Titans version, and all reissues of the AEUG used this updated chest. So it really isn't something you'll run into if you're buying this kit new. I mean, it's been fixed for over 10 years at this point. But yeah, if you're going secondhand, then it's something to look out for. Anyway, the shoulder joint can move forwards and backwards thanks to a combination of hinges in the chest. The joint itself is a polycap slipped onto a peg, so it can spin around pretty well. The upper arm has a 360-degree spin with a stable connection. You get a solid 180-degree bend from the elbow. It's really only limited by the shoulder armor. The wrists are on the standard ball joints, and the hands have that old-style trigger finger split with a ball joint in the thumb. Thankfully, it does have pegs though. The head is on a double ball joint, so it gets the job done just fine. Finally, the backpack has movable beam saber holders and thrusters. That about sums up its articulation. It's really impressive for its time, and all the moving armor in the legs just looks beautiful. But over time, the limbs on this guy have gotten really loose. Polycaps just don't age too well, especially on important weight-bearing joints. I'll give the articulation of these kits a solid 4 out of 5. While he's a lot of fun out of the box, after a few years the poses become a bit more limited. Lastly, let's take a look over these gimmicks. These kits come with everything you could ask for from a Mk-II. Let's start with the rifle though. It's exactly what you would expect, but there's some nice color separation and the scopes can fold down. These kits can also hold the gun no problem, thanks to a peg in the hands. You also get 3 ammo packs. Usually I keep the 2 extras on the inside of the shield. The beam sabers are pretty standard here, however they can fold out of the backpack, meaning he can reach back and grab them no problem. The bazooka is great here as well. There's great part separation and they can hold the bazooka up just fine thanks to a movable handle, but I prefer to keep the bazooka attached to the back of the waist. This shield looks fantastic, even with the yellow stickers on the AEUG version. I really like how you can actually slide the bottom part up as well, just like in the anime. It slides in firmly to the forearm thanks to this connecting piece. You can also spin it around, which is pretty cool. Rounding out the Mk-II's arsenal, you get this Vulcan pod, which is essentially a little headset. Apparently the Mk-II doesn't have built-in head Vulcans, so it uses this instead. It just snaps into these indents on the side of the head, no problem. Thankfully it really doesn't hamper the head's movement, so I usually just keep it on. Both kits come with that entire standard arsenal. However, the AEUG version does come with a little something extra. This nice little display base. It's modeled to look like a hangar bay, so you could probably paint this up and have it looking really cool. It even has a movable little arm and a small crew member. The one drawback here is that it doesn't actually help you get this guy in the air. Yeah, this isn't a replacement for a standard action base at all. He really just stands here and that's it. Regardless, it's a nice addition. Okay, and that's all for these gimmicks. It's everything a Mk-II needs. Just know that if you're into dioramas, you're probably going to want to get the AEUG version. I'll give these gimmicks a perfect 5 out of 5. Really, this is everything you could ask for and it all functions perfectly. Okay, time to wrap this up for a final verdict. The build was a 4 out of 5. While this does fit in line with the other 2.0 master grades, the build from the waist up is pretty bland. The appearance was a perfect 5 out of 5. These kits have great proportions, all the right panel lines, and spot-on colors. The articulation was another 4 out of 5. It has above average articulation, but the use of polycaps and key joints is a major negative in the long run. And lastly, the gimmicks received a 5 out of 5. There's nothing else you could really ask for here. Tallying all that up and dividing, you get an average score of 4.5 out of 5. or 90%. That sounds just right for these kits. They're great model kits and definitely my favorite version of the Mk-II in model kit form. Apparently they're Bandai's favorite Mk-II as well, with these kits being reused in the Musha Mk-II and the Build Mk-II. These kits are over a decade old and they still compare to modern master grades. There's really no point in waiting for a 3.0 of these guys. These 2.0s are getting the job done just fine. Okay, feel free to leave any questions or comments you have below, and I'm more than happy to get back to you. You can also follow me on Instagram where I post updates and work in progress builds. Alright, thanks for watching and see you next time.